Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the channel where we bring you stories that hit hard, tales of grit, heart, and raw truth that stick with you. Today, we've got a wild one. Sylvester Stallone hilariously destroys liberal TV host on Live. His response shocked everyone. Imagine a packed studio in Nashville, Tennessee, a smug TV host thinking he's got the edge, and Sly Stallone ready to turn it all upside down. This isn't just talk. It's a showdown that'll leave you cheering or rethinking what strength really means. Stick around, you won't believe how this ends. If you love stories with soul, hit subscribe and ring that bell. Let's dive in. The WNSH studio in Nashville buzzed like a honky-tonk on a Saturday night, the air thick with anticipation. Neon lights spelled Hayes hot takes across rustic wooden beams, a nod to the city's country soul. The crowd packed the seats, some in flannel, others in cowboy hats, boots tapping the hardwood floor, sweet teacups sweating in their hands. Sylvester Stallone settled into the leather chair, shoulders loose, a smirk tugging at his lips. He sipped from a WNSH mug, chipped, like it had seen 100 late-night shifts, and set it down with a clink that echoed. Across from him stood Jackson Hayes, 35, vest sharp as a razor, voice smooth but smug as hell. "Folks, we got a legend. Sylvester Stallone," he boomed. The crowd clapped, a few rowdy whoops cutting through from the back. "Slice here pushing his new flick, but let's cut the crap." He paused, eyes glinting like a snake. "Mr. Stallone, you're all about that old-school toughness. But it's 2025, Nashville's moving on. Isn't that masculinity outdated?" Murmurs rippled through. Some nodded, sipping tea like they smelled a win. Others tensed, fists curling. Stallone chuckled low, the sound slicing sharp. "Outdated? In Tennessee?" Jackson grinned wider. "Yes, Sly. We're past fists and grit. Time to redefine strong. More progressive, open. Right." Behind the scenes, Maggie Reynolds, the 50-year-old producer with steel at her eyes, muttered, "He's poking a damn bear." In the front row, Travis Boone, a grizzled ex-soldier with a buzz cut, clenched his fists, whispering, "This kid's toast." Stallone leaned back, owning the chair like a king. "Redefine strong," he said, slow, heavy, every word a hammer drop. "When floods hit and farmers haul sandbags all night, or moms work doubles on Music Row to feed their kids. You calling that outdated?" Silence hit hard, then a lone clap from Travis, a whistle piercing the quiet. Jackson's grin twitched. "Nice story," he snapped, voice tight, "but vulnerability's strength now. Nashville needs heroes who show weakness." Stallone leaned in, eyes locked like a predator's. "Fine, but if a drunk busts your door on Broadway at 2 a.m., you want a crier or a fighter?" The crowd erupted, cheers, hollers shaking the rafters. Jackson flushed red, words stuck in his throat. "Oh, well," he stammered, but Stallone cut in, "Pick fast, kid." The room lost it, a wave of noise crashing over. This was war, and Stallone had fired the first shot. The WNSH studio felt like it had been hit by a freight train, the crowd's roars still bouncing off the wooden beams as Jackson Hayes stood there, face redder than a Tennessee sunset. His vest clung to him, sweat beading at his temples, that smug grin nowhere to be found. Sylvester Stallone leaned back in his chair, arms stretched wide across the leather, a glint in his eye like he'd just landed a knockout punch in the ring. The neon, Hayes hot takes sign flickered overhead, mocking the host who'd thought he could take down a legend. Folks in the audience were on their feet. Travis Boone, the ex-soldier up front, hollering like he was back on the battlefield, his army tattoo flexing with every clap. Stallone tipped his head, just a slight nod, letting the chaos wash over him. Jackson gripped the mic, his knuckles whitening. He forced a laugh, sharp and brittle, cutting through the noise. "All right, Sly, you've got the crowd eating out of your hand," he said, voice tight as a banjo string. "But let's not kid ourselves. Toughness is one thing. Sure, farmers and moms grind it out. I'll give you that. But we're in a new era. Strength today, it's about opening up, showing you're human. Don't you think that's what folks really need?" The room hushed, all eyes swinging back to Stallone. He didn't move, just sat there, letting Jackson's words hang like a bad note at a Grand Ole Opry show. Then he laughed, deep, rolling, the kind of laugh that starts in your gut and shakes the walls. "You serious, kid?" he said, leaning forward, elbows slamming onto his knees with a thud. "Opening up? Showing you're human? Man, you ever try telling that to a guy pulling 16-hour shifts at the steel mill out in Gallatin? Or the waitress at Tootsie's who's been on her feet since dawn?" A few yes popped from the crowd, heads nodding. Travis cupped his hands and yelled, "Preach it, Sly." Jackson straightened, brushing a hand through his hair, desperate to claw back control. "That's not what I mean," he snapped, pacing a step. "Sure, hard work's real, I'm not denying that. But this obsession with being tough all the time, it's old news. People want heroes who can cry, who connect, not some stone-faced relic from the 80s. Behind the glass, Maggie Reynolds paced the control booth, her boots clicking on the floor. "He's digging his own grave," she muttered, glancing at the live feed. The ratings ticker on her screen spiked, red numbers climbing fast. She pressed the comms button. "Jackson, ease off. He's got the room. Don't push it." But Jackson yanked the earpiece out, tossing it aside with a clatter, his eyes locked on Stallone. Sly scratched his jaw, slow and deliberate, like he was sizing up a script. "Cry and connect, huh?" he said, voice dropping low, dangerous. "Tell you what, next time a tornado rips through Clarksville, and it will, you go find one of those stone-faced relics rebuilding his barn while you're out there connecting with the wind. See who folks run to when the shit hits the fan." The crowd exploded again, louder this time, chairs scraping as people jumped up. A woman in a denim jacket near the aisle shouted, "Damn right." Travis slammed his palm on his knee, grinning ear to ear. Jackson's jaw clenched, his cool slipping like a tire on wet gravel. "That's a cheap shot, Sly," he fired back, pointing a finger. "You're twisting it. I'm saying we've evolved. Toughness doesn't have to mean shutting down. Why is it so hard for you to get?" Stallone didn't blink. He stood up slow, towering over the mic stand, his shadow stretching across the stage. "Because I've seen what happens when you don't shut down the bullshit," he said, each word a sledgehammer. "You think those floods wait for a therapy session? Or that mom on Music Row's got time to cry when her kid hungry? Toughness ain't shutting down, it's standing up. And if you don't see that, kid, you're the one who's lost." The room went wild, wilder than a bar fight on Lower Broad. Travis leapt up, roaring, "That's my guy," as the crowd's cheers swallowed Jackson whole. Maggie slapped the console, a grin breaking through her worry. "Holy hell, he's unstoppable," she said, watching the ratings soar. Jackson stumbled back a step, mouth open, no words coming out. His trap had backfired, and Stallone wasn't just winning. He was rewriting the damn rules. The war was on, and the next move? It was anyone's guess. The WNSH studio was a powder keg, the air crackling with raw energy as the crowd's roars shook the rustic beams overhead. Sylvester Stallone stood tall, his shadow swallowing the stage. That leather chair kicked aside like it couldn't hold the storm he'd unleashed. His last words, "You're the one who's lost," burned in the air, a gauntlet slammed down before Jackson Hayes. The host's face twisted, fury and panic warring in his eyes, his vest soaked with sweat under the flickering neon Hayes hot take sign. The audience was a live wire. Travis Boone pounding his fists up front, his buzz cut glinting, army tattoo flexing with every clap, while folks in flannel and cowboy hats roared like they'd just seen a bull ride gone wild. This wasn't a talk show anymore. This was a damn arena, and the gloves were off. Jackson snatched the mic closer, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Cheap shots and tough guy lines. That's all you've got, Sly," he spat, pacing the stage like a corner dog, his polished shoes squeaking on the hardwood. "You're dodging the point. I'm not saying hard work's dead. I'm saying your Hollywood version of toughness, all fists and no feelings, it's a relic. Rocky, Rambo, those movies sold a lie. Don't you ever think about the kids who grew up thinking violence fixes everything?" He jabbed a finger at Stallone, his eyes wild, betting it all on this swing, his breath ragged in the mic. The crowd hushed, a tense ripple spreading through the seats. Stallone didn't flinch. He crossed his arms, biceps straining his shirt, and let out a slow breath through his nose, the sound heavy as a hammer on steel. "A lie, huh?" he said, voice low, steady, rolling him like thunder from the Smokies. "You ever actually watched Rocky, kid? That wasn't about violence. That was about a guy getting up, again and again, when life beat him bloody. Rambo? Hell, he just wanted to be left alone. If folks had stayed off his back, no one would have gotten hurt." He stepped closer, boots thudding loud, deliberate. "You want to talk lies? How about the one where you think toughness is the enemy?" A cheer erupted, sharp, sudden, like a match striking flint. Travis hollered, "Tell him, Sly," as a woman in the third row clapped so hard her tea splashed onto her boots. Behind the glass, Maggie Reynolds froze in the control booth, her hand hovering over the comms, eyes darting to the live feed. The ratings ticker spiked red, climbing like a rocket. "He's losing it," she whispered, her voice tight. She stabbed the comms button. "Jackson, pull back now." But he ripped the earpiece out again, hurling it to the floor with a crack that echoed, his chest heaving as he glared at Stallone. Jackson stormed forward, inches from Sly, voice rising to a near shout. "Don't twist this. America's waking up. People are done with your kind of tough. It's divisive, it's cold, it shuts folks out. We need unity, not some macho bullshit that tells men they can't feel." The room split wide, half gasping, half cheering, a fault line cracking through the crowd. Travis shot to his feet, voice booming cold. "You ever carried a buddy through a firefight, punk?" His words hit like a gut punch, raw and real, a ripple of nods spreading behind him. Stallone held Jackson's glare, unblinking, then tilted his head slow, like a predator sizing up a kill. "Divisive," he said, voice dropping to a growl that rumbled through the mic. "You ever met a firefighter who ran into a burning house? A cop who took a bullet on Nolensville Pike? A single mom who hasn't slept in days just to keep her kids fed? You think they're shutting folks out or holding the damn world together?" He paused, letting it sink deep, the silence so thick you could choke on it. "Toughness ain't cold, kid. It's what keeps the lights on when cowards like you want to talk it to death." The crowd detonated, screams, stomps, a wall of sound that rocked the studio to its bones. Travis roared, "Hell yes," as fists pumped the air, a guy in a trucker hat spilling his drink in the frenzy. Jackson stumbled back, his fingers still raised but trembling now, sweat dripping down his brow. "That's not fair," he shouted, voice cracking like thin ice. "You're making it black and white. It's not." Stallone stepped closer, towering over him, his presence swallowing the stage. "Life is black and white when a roof's caving in," he said, slow, brutal, each word a sledgehammer. "You want to unify? Good. Start by thanking the tough ones who built this country, not tearing them down to feel better about yourself." Maggie burst from the booth, her boots pounding the floor as she stormed the stage, mic clutched tight. All right, cut it," she yelled, waving at the crew, her voice slicing through the chaos. "We're taking a break." The audience booed loud, some chanting Sly, Sly, as chairs scraped and fists shook. Jackson spun on her, furious, his face a mask of red. "What the hell, Maggie? I got this." She grabbed his arm, nails digging in, hissing low, "No, you don't. He's eating you alive, and you're too damn blind to see it." Stallone just smirked, giving the crowd a small wave before stepping back, calm as a man who'd already claimed the hill. Travis yelled over the din, "Finish him, Sly." The war wasn't over, but right now, the battlefield belonged to one man, and Jackson was bleeding out fast. The WNSH studio lights snapped off, plunging the stage into shadow as Maggie Reynolds hauled Jackson Hayes backstage, her grip like steel on his trembling arm. The crowd's boos and chants, "Sly, Sly," rattled the rafters, a restless tide that wouldn't fade. Sylvester Stallone stood tall, hands in his pockets, smirk carved deep as he soaked in the chaos he'd ignited. The neon, Hayes hot takes sign buzzed faintly, a dying ember in the storm he'd brewed. Travis Boone lingered up front, phone out, thumb slamming the screen as he uploaded the clip, caption blazing, "Stallone smoked this punk live in Nashville." Folks shuffled out slow, buzzing like they'd seen a bar brawl turn mythic, their boots scuffing the hardwood. Cowboy hats tipped low as they swapped odd whispers. Backstage, Jackson slumped against a cinder-block wall, vest unbuttoned, sweat streaking his flushed face. "What the hell, Maggie?" he snarled, shoving her hand off with a shaky jerk. "You cut me off when I was turning it around." Maggie spun on him, eyes blazing under the dim hallway flicker. "Turning around? You were drowning out there, kid. Sly had you pinned. I saved your ass from a knockout." She jabbed a finger at his chest, voice low, fierce. "You're welcome." Jackson kicked a folding chair, the clang bouncing off the walls. "Bullshit. I had him. People would have seen my side." Maggie shook her head slow, her lips a tight line. "Not in this town, Jackson. Sly's talking floods and single moms. You lost the room the second you opened your mouth." Her radio crackled, a producer's voice cutting through. "Maggie, it's online. Travis posted it. It's blowing up." She cursed under her breath, glaring at Jackson. "Too late now, genius. You've lit the fuse." Nashville caught fire fast. Travis's clip hit X, 10,000 views in minutes, then 100,000, racing across screens from dive bars on Demonbrunn to porches in Franklin. Comments flooded and hot. "Stallone, shut that clown down." A waitress at Tootsie's Orchid Lounge posted her own shaky video. Apron stained, voice rough but proud. "I work doubles to pay my bills. Toughness ain't cold, it's survival." Sly gets it. By midnight, a grizzled trucker on I-65 shared a dashcam rant, his CB radio crackling in the background. "That host don't know shit. My dad rebuilt our farm after the '98 tornado with his bare hands. Tough's what keeps us alive." The clip trended hashtag Sly in Nashville, a wildfire no one could douse. At WNSH, the control room was a madhouse. Maggie hunched over a monitor, her team scrambling as phones rang off the hooks like church bells on Sunday. 3 million views, an assistant shouted, voice shaking with disbelief. "Radio's got a song already. Stand like Stallone." The twangy demo crackled through a speaker, born in some garage off Murfreesboro Road, all grit and steel guitar. Maggie rubbed her temples, muttering, "This is insane." She glanced at Jackson, slumped in a corner, scrolling X on his phone, his face pale as the likes buried him. "They're calling me a snowflake," he said, voice hollow, almost a whisper. "A damn snowflake." Maggie sighed, softening just a touch. "You picked the wrong hill, kid," she said, resting a hand on his shoulder. Sly didn't just win. He tapped something real. Folks out there, they're tired of being told their strength's a flaw. Jackson looked up, eyes glassy, desperate. "So what now?" "I'm done." She squinted, thinking hard. "Not yet, but you've got a mess to climb out of. Start digging." Her radio buzzed again. "Maggie, CNN's online too. They want a statement." She waved it off, sharp. "Tell 'em we're dark, till morning. I need a bourbon first." Outside, the clip rolled on, unstoppable. A single mom in Hermitage spoke in her phone, kids asleep behind her. "I fight 'cause I have to, slice right." Nashville felt it deep. Bar TVs looped the showdown, truck stop jukeboxes hummed the song, and folks toasted Sly over beers of the row, their voices thick with pride. Travis grinned at his phone, now at 500,000 views, muttering, "Knew he'd do it." Stallone slipped out a side door, unbothered, the night air cool against his skin. He didn't check X. He'd said his piece. But the city roared louder than ever. And Jackson's fall? It was just a spark. Something bigger was brewing, and it wasn't slowing down. A week later, Nashville still buzzed, restless like a storm's aftermath. Sylvester Stallone sat at a dive on 12th Avenue South, coffee steaming in his hands. The joint smelled of grease, tables scratched from years of hard stories. Outside, radios faintly played Stand Like Stallone, now a Tennessee staple. He wiped sweat with a napkin, sleeves rolled up, looking like any local. A young reporter slid in, recorder clicking on. "Sly," he started, nervous, "that WNSH clips everywhere. Millions of views. Did you expect this?" Stallone sipped slow, mug clinking down, eyes steady. "Nah, just said what I think. Truth surprises folks these days." The kid leaned in. "But Nashville's buzzing. What's that feel like?" Sly smirked. "Like people know bullshit when they hear it." Across town, Jackson Hayes' show tanked. Ratings sank, his slot bumped for reruns. He sat in a dim WNSH office, tie loose, staring at the muted TV, looping his loss. Maggie Reynolds leaned in the doorway, boots scuffed. "Told you to clean it up," she said flat. "You didn't." Jackson rubbed his face. "Why'd they pick him, Maggie?" She softened. "He spoke their language. You talked over him." Nashville carried Stallone's words like fire. Travis Boone stood in a lot off Gallatin Pike, barking at teens, jabbing punching bags he'd rigged. "Sly showed you. Life hits, you hit back." A kid grinned through a split lip. "Like Rocky." Travis nodded. "Damn right." The clip had sparked it, toughness reborn. At a diner on Nolensville Pike, a single mom told her friend, "Watched it 10 times. Reminded me I'm tough." Her voice cracked. Eyes shone. Something shifted, quiet, real. Workers pushed harder, parents taught grit. Stallone finished his coffee, sliding it aside. The reporter pressed. "What's toughness mean to you?" Sly leaned in, voice low, piercing. "It's who you are when the lights go out, when no one's watching. Life don't care if you cry. It cares if you stand." He stood, tossed a few bucks down, and walked out, bell jingling soft. The reporter sat stunned. Jackson faded, but Stallone's echo lingered, raw, unshakable. Nashville didn't just hear him. It felt him. Folks, if this hit you, smash that like, share it, and subscribe for more tales that cut deep. What's your toughness? Drop it below. I'm reading everyone. Stay strong.